How you doing? Joe McCall here, and I got a guest with me. His name is Eric Lunsford. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Joe. How are you?
Excellent.
Good.
Very good. Eric has been doing some land deals for a little while now, and he's crushing it, and he's been sharing his numbers in the Facebook group. In fact, I want to share with you kind of what he's been doing here in the Facebook group, because I want to make sure you guys see his posts and you know who he is and you know who I'm talking about. This is Eric. He posted something in here that was really cool. This one right here. And this is what I love about Eric. He just is very transparent with his numbers. He talks about how much mail he's been sending out, the leads that he's been getting in, the average response rates, number of contracts that he's been getting, deals that he's been closing. And he tracks these ratios, these numbers. I call them KPIs, key performance indicators. So he's sending mail and he's doing deals. His average gross profit is around $7,000 or $8,000, and his revenue in September was $108,000. Not bad. And I'm not sure how much you spent on marketing, Eric, but your gross profit was $24,000. So when you say gross profit, is that like revenue that came in minus your purchase price for the property minus the direct mail you spent?
Yeah, so it's not the direct mail. That's going to be about a couple $1,000s per contract, but it is minus the commissions. I use a realtor for all of my deals, so minus commissions, minus closing costs. Basically, it's whatever I get in my pocket at the end of the deal.
Okay, cool. So you still, after you figure in direct mail, you're spending about $1,000, $2,000 in direct mail per deal?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool. So I wanted to get Eric on here to introduce you guys to him, and he posts in the Facebook group. And I'd like to have Eric talk about some of what he's doing here. So Eric, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us where you're from and what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll try and keep it short and sweet, but as you'll see, I'm from Idaho, the great state of Idaho. Yeah, I mean, to Joe's point, I've been doing this. I'm very similar in the same boat of a lot of people who are in this group. I started really at the beginning of this year, January 1. I had a full-time job. I had a full-time 6-figure job that I've actually heard Joe talk about this too. I'm very similar to him, where I took about 3 years just learning everything about real estate and never really doing a lot. And then it was probably about last summer. I was listening to his podcast and he happened to be talking. I don't remember who you were talking to, Joe, but you're talking to somebody about vacant land, and maybe it was just your own experience, but I thought that is something I can get behind. I worked sort of your normal 9 to 5, and well, in reality, it was probably more like a 7 to 6, like most of us. Right. And so it was like, I don't have the time to do a bunch of cold calling. I don't have the time to, go and walk properties. I don't have the time to really manage rehab, contractors and all those things. And that really wasn't what I call my vehicle. And then when Joe started talking about land, I thought, I really like the simplicity of this model. And like I said, that was last summer. So I probably dove in head first, really, for about a few months there. I bought Joe's course. I went through all the different modules, and I know me, so I don't recommend everybody do this, but I know me, and I sort of have to burn all the ships to really be successful at something. And so on October 3rd last year, I walked into my boss's office and said, "Hey, I'm giving you 3 months notice. At the end of the year, I'm done." Which is scary because I hadn't yet even to mail any mailers, let alone do a deal. But again, it was I don't know, I would call it a healthy risk. I knew that I had the funds to give myself about a year to make this work. Not only a year of providing the same sort of lifestyle for my family, but also a year of being able to invest a little bit into the business itself, right? And so that was really what I set out to do at the beginning of the year. And it's been great. And I've learned a ton, not only about this business, but just about myself as well. I think I've learned a ton just around just what it takes to build a successful business, regardless of land or whatever it might be, just almost any business. It's just, like I said, I'm a big learner. As you can see, this is like a quarter of the books that I have. I read a lot. And so I know a lot around what I've read from other entrepreneurs. And now I get to kind of feel it and see it myself. So yeah, it's been a blast. And I'm 10 months into this, and made the decision a couple of weeks ago that I do not have to go back to a 9 to 5, and I can keep building this and scaling this and kind of on to the next stage.
Awesome. Talk about the number of deals that you've done since you went full time. And then I want to ask you questions on how you're doing your deals now.
Yeah, for sure. So I have done, I apologize, I'm kind of looking over because I'm looking at my numbers themselves, but as of today, I have actually done about, so I've done about 17 deals. Some of those have been closed, already done. Some of those are in escrow. Some of those are under contract, still for sale. But I've done about 17 deals. And I would note this is that my first deal, even though I started on January 1st, essentially, I did not get my first deal closed and paid until June 9th. So that was only because I was learning the process, and I drug my feet a lot through the first couple of deals. I didn't want to buy them yet. I wanted to try and find a buyer before I actually closed on them. The closing process itself took a long time. In fact, that deal took 6 months to close. And that was just, I think I posted something on Facebook. I won't go into details, but there's just a lot involved in that situation. So really in the last, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 3.5 months, I've done the 17 deals.
So things have really started picking up because you're sending more mail.
And just, I know I understand the process a little bit better, right? So now I know what happens when I get a deal under contract. Now I know what to sort of expect when I get a buyer who actually wants to buy the property. I know who I can kind of reach out to help me move the process along, right? Title company, agents, attorneys. I've worked with some attorneys too. And so you just sort of learn the process a little bit more every time you do it. And speeds up, right?
We're always learning. I mean, we're in some new markets right now in Florida, and we just found yesterday a buyer that said, I'll buy anything that you can give me. I don't care if it's $1,000 or $1 million. Just send me all of your deals. He wants them all. So those are our A+ buyers, right?
Yep.
Talk a little bit about how you do your deals, Eric. So what kind of postcards or letters do you send? Do you send them to voicemail? Do you call them before you send the offer? What do you do there?
Yeah, I mean, I follow a lot of what you originally teach, right? So I do the letters. I do neutral letters. I don't do postcards. Not that I don't want to. We can dive into that too as well. I wanted to pick something and really stick to it, right? And so when I originally took the course back in, I don't know, it was maybe October, November last year, that's what you were doing, right? That's what you were sort of teaching. So I do letters, neutral letters. I use Freedom Soft, which I think is fantastic.
Are you using Freedom Soft for your direct mail, or are you using Rocket
I'm using Rocket for direct mail still. Yeah, I've been a really big fan of them. You and I talked about this, Joe. I think the only thing that's a little bit, I wish I didn't have to do is that I do 15,000 mailers a month. So I have to pre-order. And so you got to pay that up front, right? So that can be pretty expensive. Freedom Soft doesn't make you do that. But
are you doing, doing bulk rate, or are you doing first class?
I'm actually doing bulk rate.
Okay.
Yep. So that is a little bit of a difference. It saves quite a bit of money on just OpEx, right? But as long as I'm mailing consistently, I mail on a weekly basis. I already know that I'm about 2.5 to 3 weeks lag time. So from the time that I mail it, I really don't start getting those leads for about 2 or 3 weeks. But that's fine as long as I know that, right? Now, if I were to take a break, that's going to hurt me because I'll have a week or two of just crickets, right? And so I just kind of have to understand that. But
you should try the range postcard. We were talking about that.
That's what we were talking about. Yep.
I was just talking to my guy today, and it's working pretty good.
Yeah. I definitely want to, as individuals on this phone call, and maybe I'm sure there's other people who are already here, as you look to scale. And I'll say this too as well. My intent at the beginning of the year, and will continue to be, is that I don't want to work more than a couple of hours a day myself actively in the business. And so as I'm mailing 15,000 mailers, obviously you see your lead generation tick up significantly. And so for me, I'm right about that point. But when I start to scale up again to, let's say, 30,000 mailers a month, I'm definitely going to want to take some of those people who want retail or over retail. I just rather maybe not hear from them, right? And so giving them that range offer kind of helps weed that out.
So then the calls go to voicemail in FreedomSoft, right?
Yep.
And then do you call them back right away, or do you send them an offer first?
So I will send them an offer. Again, I've been pretty transparent about this on the Facebook page too. I very rarely will call people. In fact, I'm looking at all the deals that I've actually closed and been paid for. There's only one individual I ever picked up the phone and talked to. Otherwise, I was all done via text and email. That's
awesome.
That's a millennial for you right there.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on the phone. I don't want to talk to people. I will if I need to, right? I will if I feel like I've got them kind of right on the edge of making it a good deal, or of course if they've got concerns or they're just more comfortable talking. But most people are okay with texts and email these days. And so what I will do is they'll leave a voicemail. I turn it around within 24 hours. So I work every day, but again, it's only 1 or 2 hours a day. So easily within 24 hours, somebody gets an offer. What I will usually do is if they just call and leave a voicemail, no email, or I don't know if they have the capabilities of like SMS messaging. What I'll do is I'll mail them an offer, but then I'll immediately text them and say, hey, I just sent an offer in the mail. If you'd like, I can email it to you as well. Just let me know what that is. I'd say probably 50% of the time they give me their email as well, and then I'll email that too. And then we just kind of go from there.
You're getting about a 1% response rate. I love this because you're saving a lot of money on direct mail because you're doing bulk rate. Your response rate, I bet you would be higher if you sent first class. But I may be wrong. I mean, the guys at Rocket Print, they swear by bulk rate. They say it's not a big deal. You just have to wait longer for the leads to come in. Right. But also you're saving a lot of money. So which means you can send more mail for the same amount. So maybe it's a wash, right? Maybe it's a wash. Because if your budget is, $10,000 a month for direct mail, which some of you guys, that's a lot. Sure. That I'm not sure what the numbers would be, but if the response rates, like how much would the response rates jump? I don't know. The only way you'd know is testing that. So somebody was asking, is FreedomSoft texting working for you right now?
It is, yeah. I mean, I think we all knew that the carriers did some things recently where it wasn't working for about maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And so I actually hopped over to Google Voice. It was way less convenient, but it was free and it was still pretty simple for me to do. And I posted on the Facebook page too about this as well. I think the FreedomSoft team was great. I probably once a week would email them just saying, hey, where are we at? Right. And they'd say, well, we're still having discussions. And I will say part of that was my fault. Part of that was that the company name that I had in FreedomSoft was just ever so slightly different. I think there was like a missing comma compared to what the federal government had as my LLC. And so naturally, whoever it was that was sort of reviewing those files just sort of dismissed it and moved along, right? So there was a little bit on me too as well. But yeah, I think there was about a 2 or 3 week period there where I was using Google Voice for text.
All right. So I love this too. You're sending them a text. You're sending your mail. You're sending them an offer in the mail.
Yep.
Talk about your process for coming up with your offers. How do you do that?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. I mean, really what I'll do is I'll use Zillow and or Redfin. So I say that just because there's those non-disclosure states like Texas that Zillow's not going to give you a lot of info. Really what I'll do is I will hone in on where my property is on Zillow, and I will ideally find a decent amount of comps in that same neighborhood within the last 90 days. So if there's there's a tool there, Joe, that you recommended that I absolutely love, that it's that Pebble, Pebble add-on or whatever, right? That just really quickly averages all of the sold comps or whatever it might be. So I use that religiously. I mean, I'll go through Zillow, I'll find properties. Again, ideally 90 days. That's super easy to do, say in Florida. But if you're in, let's say, Arizona, more rural, I might have to back it out to a year, right? 12 months. And I'll basically just look at the sold comps, and I'll use that Pebble tool to give me an idea of where sort of the average is per acre. And then I'll take a quick look at the actives in that same range. Actives really because, again, that's your competition. So I'm not always trying to be the lowest price, but I definitely want to be one of the lowest prices just to move it quickly. And so sometimes you'll see the comps are very different. Like the actives, like just this morning I did one where surprisingly the actives were telling me that it was about double what the sold comps were telling me. And so then I kind of go with the lower end one. Honestly, it takes me about 3 to 4 minutes to comp a property, and I don't put a ton of effort into it. I know that I'm probably going to be within that range.
That's awesome.
And I've had this weird mentality lately, Joe, you'll probably agree with this too. It's like, all I'm trying to get you to do is actually say no. Like, if you say yes, fantastic. But really what I want you to say is no, that's ridiculous. So I can kind of move you to like, I'll touch base in 3 months. But a lot of times people are like, you're about $5,000 too short. It's like, awesome. I can work with that. Let me get a little more detail and see if I can do something.
I love it. You're comping these properties. I want to ask you this because sometimes I'm always wrestling with this. I'm looking at a property, looking at the solds, and you see a bunch of really cheap solds and a bunch of more expensive premium solds, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere in the middle. And I'm always thinking, well, okay, what price should I sell it for? Should I try to sell it for where these cheap comps are at? Or should I try to sell it for where these higher priced comps are at? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it depends a little bit on the market, right? You get a good idea. So one of the things that I will do when I am doing, and this is kind of taking a step back a little bit, but when I'm doing some of the market research of the different markets I want to go into, one of the things that I'll do actually is I'll sort of take a look at, well, first and foremost, what's the total comps or what's the total property sold in 90 days for that market. So let's say it's a county. For me, that's got to be at least 60. If it's not even 60, I'm really not even more bothered. But if there's at least 60 in a county that's sold in the last 90 days, I'm interested. But then real quick, what I'll do is I'll actually look at, okay, how many active listings are currently, and then how many sold properties in the last year have there been? And really what I'm trying to understand is like, how much inventory is in this county, right? So often there's about a year's worth of inventory. And so obviously I don't want to wait a year to sell a property, but that gives me a little bit better idea of like how quickly properties are churning through. And that's why I say, I don't know that I necessarily need to be the lowest price one. If I know that, wow, there's only 6 months of inventory in this market, I'm okay with being a little bit more kind of in that middle area. Like you were saying, Joe, I don't have to be kind of on the very bottom there. But then another thing, and I will continue to say this, I know we're not all in the same boat in this sense, but I really leverage my agents, my real estate agents that I work with. I build a rapport, build a relationship with them that if I'm ever struggling, I'll just send it over to them. I'll just say like, hey, give me your best judgment. And sometimes like this morning, I have an agent in Arizona who said, geez, these are all over the place. He's like, I'd probably just recommend this, right? And so even he's a little wishy-washy on what it is. But I would say that was probably one of the biggest things for me, is just kind of understanding like what is the total inventory churn, if you will, that will sort of help dictate to like where I think it might be listed at.
I've been looking at what can I sell this property for, right? Like just sometimes it's a gut check. It's just looking at the solds, it's looking at the actives. I'm thinking, all right, I want to sell this thing quickly. I want to sell it in 1 or 2 months with a realtor.
Yep.
I love that you're using realtors. I want to sell this thing quick. So what would I need to price it at? If somebody's looking for a property in this area, what would make this deal attractive? Like, oh my gosh, I've got to get this thing. I got to go buy it right now. And I come up with that number. And sometimes, sometimes I'll first look at the actives and then look at the solds. But I figure, all right, if I'm going to sell it for 20, cool. I want to make, and then I work backwards. I say, all right, I'm going to sell it for 20. I want to make at least 10 grand. So I'm going to offer that. Then that brings that down to 10. I'm going to pay a realtor $2,000. So that brings it to 8. I'm going to have, $1,500 in closing costs. That brings it to $6,500. And I maybe have $500 for a photographer or whatever. That brings it down to $6,000. Boom. That's my offer, $6,000. I'm not doing anymore the percentage of what I think it's worth down, although that works, but like just working the numbers backwards and then looking at, okay, so if I'm going to offer $6,000, what going to the sold comps now and looking at that, all right, what are the cheapest properties selling for? And a lot of times those cheap properties are what wholesalers like you and me are buying the properties for, right? So those aren't necessarily the prices that we're selling them to retail buyers. But so anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing. And it's once you figure this out and you give yourself permission to make mistakes and you refuse to let yourself fall into analysis paralysis where you're just overanalyzing it, this 3 to 5 minutes, you come up with offers pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is one of the reasons why I loved when I was listening to your podcast a year ago, right? This is one of the reasons why I loved this vehicle, because it felt so safe. Like, listen, if you make the wrong offer, the market's going to tell you. And if you do it the right way, like you teach, you're not out anything. If you have to cancel the contract, sure, you might have a hurt feelings from a potential seller, right? But you're not out any money. You're not stuck legally to the piece of land, all of that. And you learned a really big lesson, right? And so I think that's the other thing too, is just like, of course, do your best, but I probably make I would say I probably make 7 to 10 offers a day, and I have been for quite some time. And so, yes, of course, it's easier for me, but that's just because I've just done them so much, right? And so I remember in the very beginning, last January, thinking, I know if this is even accurate, right? And the reality of it is like, you'll know, like you'll know, and you'll be better the next time you make an offer, right? So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think don't put too much stress. Don't put too much weight on that offer. You'll learn, you'll know.
The other thing I say is, you might look at price, what price says to offer. Always take that with a grain of salt. You want to look at the comparables on Zillow or Redfin. But take a look at what price says. Take a look at what you're looking, what would you come up with from the actives and then the solds. And then if you've got 2 or 3 numbers, just go with the lower one, right? Just go with the lower one, send it out, and do it. All right. Let's talk about follow-up. Are you doing any follow-up with your old leads?
Yes. So that's actually, and I like, again, as you scale and as you go longer, you'll change that process. So if I remember right, and I may be wrong about this, but I know, so again, I used obviously Freedom Soft, and there were some things already baked into that, which I really appreciated, right? Using Joe's kind of vacant land Freedom Soft. And if I remember right, it was only up to like the 3rd follow-up offer, and then it stopped. And by month 3 or 4, I realized, well, this feels wrong. I'm not sending follow-ups anymore. They're just done. And so naturally I added through the entire year, right? So every month I will follow up. But here's the thing that I recently ran into maybe a couple months ago is I would be sending offer number 9 to somebody who has never expressed anything other than the initial interest 9 months ago. And I kind of thought, okay, this is costing me about $1 every time I mail them this offer. I'm never hearing anything from them. So I changed my process a little bit. Basically what I'll do is I'll send a follow-up offer every month for 3 months. And then at month 4 is sort of my decision. And I baked this into Freedom Soft, where that task on month 4 is now, 1, have they expressed any interest at all? If not, then what I do is I just send them a follow-up letter. Hey, we talked a few months ago, you were interested in selling. I'm just curious if you still own the property. And if so, are you still interested?
Is that what you say?
No, that's actually a letter. Like I'll direct mail to Rocket Print, click to mail that letter. Most of the time I don't get a response. They've probably already sold it, or they're just not interested anymore. But that sort of saves me money. It saves me time from following up with people who really aren't interested anymore. The other thing I'll do is maybe we aren't too far off base, and so it's been 3 months. So I'll recomp it. And if it's a significant change, I'll send them another offer, a new offer. If it's not a significant change, then usually what I'll do is I'll send them that follow-up letter again. And then I think the other thing that I do as well that I'm not afraid of doing now, but I really was in the beginning, is it takes a lot for me to mark somebody as a dead lead. That's somebody who has basically said like, don't ever contact me again. This is ridiculous. But if I'm, let's say, $25,000 off, what I'll do is I'll just kind of mark like cold, not interested, follow up in 3 months. So that's another task of like, okay, there's no point in me following up in a month. I'm probably just going to tick them off anyways. They're not going to change their mind that quickly, but they might in 3 months. And so I'll just follow up with them in 3 months. So I bring that all up because, again, as you go longer and as you scale a little bit, you're going to want that to work to what works with you, right?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, you could add into the workflow automation in FreedomSoft after offer number 3. Just have it create a new task in 3 months to send another offer, or send them just a generic letter. And one of the cool things too, if you did this, Eric, you could create what's called a mail sequence inside of FreedomSoft, and you could assign them to a mail sequence that every 90 days it sends them a letter or a postcard. So you could set it up where, in 3 months it sends them just a regular letter. The next 3 months later it sends them a postcard. So you could put them into an automated follow-up sequence with direct mail using FreedomSoft if you wanted to, and you could stop at any time.
Right.
But yeah, that's awesome. Follow-up's important, and the more you do this, the longer you do this, Eric, you're going to get more and more deals from that follow-up.
Sure.
Do you do any voicemails to your old leads too?
I don't. Not right now, no.
You should think about that. You could do something like slide broadcast.
Yep.
Or just slide dial one at a time. I was thinking about this the other day. I learned a lot of what I'm doing now from a guy who was an investor that I met at a boot camp. I was going to somebody's land boot camp, and I was talking to the guy in the back who's done a lot of deals. And I was like, hey, what are you doing, man? How are you doing this? And he said, well, it's simple. I send a letter or postcard, send them to voicemail. A couple times a week, I listen to all my voicemails. I send them an offer, and then I send them a text saying, hey, you should get an offer in the mail in a little bit. And then 2 weeks later, I'll send them a voicemail. And then 2 weeks later, I send them another offer. And then 2 weeks later, I send them a voicemail. So every 2 weeks, he's just doing this and I don't remember how long. That's brilliant. I love that. But so then I started doing that. Now, one of the things that we do sometimes, not all the time, usually I would do this more when my boys were helping me, is a task would come up 2 weeks later to send them a slide dial. And so we would do slide dial through the FreedomSoft number to leave them a voicemail that just would, and it was personalized. Hey, Jim, this is Joe. Just following up with the offer I sent to you for your 2.6 acre lot in Jackson County. Just wanting to know if you got my offer. If you had any questions, let me know. And it was just a voicemail. And that way too, you can leave a voicemail at 6 a.m. or at 9 or 10 p.m. if you want. You could also, if you wanted to make it generic, you could do slide broadcast, where you could download once a month, just download all of your old leads that are marked as, I don't know, your status could be cold follow-up, right? Mm-hmm. And you can just download all of them into a spreadsheet. Then you upload that spreadsheet into slide broadcast, but you'd have to record a generic voicemail. So it'd have to be, hey, this is Eric with Land Holdings. Just following up with that offer I sent you a little while ago about your vacant lot. If you've sold it yet, I don't know, let me know. I'd love to chat with you. My phone number is this. So try to make it personal, but you can't call them by name, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And then if you spread out the follow-up every 3 months instead of every month, in terms of the direct mail, that'll be good.
Yeah, for sure. I like that idea.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about realtors. You use realtors to sell all your deals.
I do.
How many different counties have you done deals in?
Oh, geez. Well, the counties that I've actually done deals in, I am in, looks like 8. I've got under contract and closed in 8 different counties.
All right. How did you find the realtors in those 8 different counties?
I think that method has changed a little bit too as well. I mean, what I do now is, again, pretty simple. I will go find my property in Zillow or Redfin, wherever it's, whatever works best. And I'll sort of zoom out a little bit and find any realtors that have sold within the last year, any properties within that area, right? To me, that's worked the best because they're already pretty familiar with that area. They've sold at least one property in the last year in that area. Of course, I'm trying to find an agent who's maybe sold more than one property. But really, that's just my initial reach out of just, I shoot them an email, say, hey, I'm entering this new market. I'm a national land investor, really looking to find a partner. in the multiple deals that I bring in to help me sort of, list these and sell these on a pretty quick pace. If you're interested, give me a call. Let's chat a little bit more. And I'd say that, I probably send 5 or 6 emails, and I get 1 or 2 people reaching out to me saying,
You're not even calling them?
I'm not even calling them. I am, like I said, I
love it.
Right?
I love it. You're so lazy, Eric.
I'm so lazy, man. I've even been thinking about how do I have a family member who is a real estate agent here locally who really loves what I'm getting into. And I've even thought about how do I leverage her so I don't even have to talk to agents at all. I could just have her do that work for me. Because I think honestly, that's not what I'm good at, right? I am good at the systems piece. I'm good at sort of the overall strategic business piece. How do we scale? How do we do those things? I can absolutely hop on the phone and talk to people, but it's just not what I enjoy. So it's sort of like, if I can build a business where I don't have to do that, or I can minimize that, then I will.
Yeah, one of these days you're going to get an assistant who can do those kinds of calls for you, right? Maybe a local assistant. It could be somebody that, you pay the minimum wage and then give them a percentage of the profits.
Exactly.
But that way, they can be the one to call the realtors. They can be the one who makes those phone calls that you hate to make. Yep. That's so funny.
Yeah.
So here's the deal too. Some of you are listening to this, maybe you can't afford the marketing that Eric's spending, but you can get on the phone. Eric could do more deals. Yes. He could buy them cheaper if he was willing to get on the phone and talk to people. But for him, it's like, I don't want to do it. I totally understand. I'm in the same boat, right? Fortunately for me, my acquisitions guy, Matt, he doesn't mind getting on the phone and talking. And so, you might go from 1 deal out of every 30 offers to 1 out of 15 offers get accepted when you talk to them. But that means you got to do a lot of talking. And for some guys, English might be a second language for you, right? You might be in another country. You might have bad internet, not good enough internet to make phone calls, You might have a stuttering problem. So you could still do deals and still make money without talking to people. The key to it is consistency. Do a lot of marketing, make a lot of offers. So you said you were making 5 to 7 offers a day. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah.
Good. That's a lot. That's 25 to 35 offers a week.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm averaging in the last couple of months, it's about 29 offers a week.
Love it. I can't wait for you to test the range postcard. I don't think you'll get a higher response rate. It might actually be a little less, but the quality of the leads you're going to find you're going to be really good.
Yeah.
One more question I got is, when you're looking for a state or a county to go into, what are some of the things you look for?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is where I differ a little bit from what you had originally talked about in sort of your course. So I know a lot of folks go for more of like the rural, slightly larger acreage. You're looking for folks who, recreationally or camping or whatever reason they want to use that land. I focus more towards infill lots. So I'm really looking for those people who want to build a house. And so really when I go out there, but with that said, the method in which I find sort of the markets, I don't think necessarily changes or differs too much. So really what I'll go out there and do is just recently, in the last couple of months, I've actually gone out and started to use ListSource to just give me a broad overview of what it says the most popular counties are of sold comps within the last 90 days. And then what I will do is I will then go out to, once again, Zillow, and I will just type in that county in Zillow and change my criteria. Personally, my criteria is just, again, anything that's sold in the last 90 days, anything that is $25,000 or more. So I'm not super interested in, the lower purchase price properties. Very recently, I started choosing a minimum acreage of 0.2 acres. So that's just because I stumbled. I got into a couple markets that had a lot of like 0.06 acre lots that just really weren't worth my time. And is, again, you kind of waste money on those mailers when in reality, you kind of wish you didn't have to mail those people. So And then basically what I'll do is I'll just, like I said, I'll make sure in Zillow there's at least 60 comps in the last 90 days. If there is, then I'll do a little bit more digging from an inventory standpoint. But then I just go pop over to price, and I basically set my criteria, that same criteria. And again, one of the things for me that I noticed, I guess, and maybe it's worth saying, is that I've moved into a place where if a market under my criteria doesn't have, I would say at least 2,500 listing, like 2,500 properties on a list, I probably won't mail them. And that's just because I've learned from my experience that I've mailed lists that are like counties that are only 500 records, and I didn't get a deal, and now I have nothing else to build off of it.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, well, that was kind of a waste. Like I can't even mail the other half of the county. And even worse, let's say I did potentially get one deal, and now I've got to build a rapport with an agent who's really going to only help me with this one deal, and I'm never going to talk to them again because I'm not going to do any more business in that county.
And it's a lot harder to get comps.
Yes, exactly. That's another big piece too.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching these videos. If you like my channel at all, please hit the subscribe button, get the notification bell thing clicked so you can get notified when new videos come out. Really appreciate it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, comment down below, all right? Thank you.